Good afternoon. Welcome to Assembly Natural Resources. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblyman DeLong. Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblyman Gurr. Assemblywoman Hanson. Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Urick. Chair Cohen.
And I am present. Before we get started, some housekeeping. Please silent all electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. For those joining us online, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize any background noise. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name and any affiliation, if any, for the record, then turn off the microphone each time you're done speaking. As for handouts, please provide 15 hard copies for members of the public. Electronic copies should have been submitted to our committee manager by noon on Friday, so the previous business day. For members of the committee, we expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if we may not agree with each other's positions. Committee members will be using our laptops and other electronic devices to view handouts, etc. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Also, we're going to go a little out of order. We're going to start with our work session, but then we will go Assembly Bill 220 and Assembly Bill 221. So with that, we are going to start on our work session. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick Anthony from the Research Division, sorry about that, Committee Policy Analyst. 3 bills on work session today. First is Assembly Bill 19, was heard in this committee on February 22nd. Was brought by behalf of this committee on behalf of the Division of Water Resources. The bill allows tribal governments to apply for grants from the Channel Clearance, Maintenance, Restoration, Surveying, and Monumenting Program, and the bill also authorizes certain officers and employees of tribal government to apply for the position of State Water Rights Surveyor. There are no amendments to this measure, Madam Chair.
Okay, do we have any questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a motion from the Vice Chair. I have a second from Assembly Member Watts. All in favor of do pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, that passes unanimously, and I will assign the floor statement to the Vice Chair.
Happy to do so.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to Assembly Bill 46.
Thank you, Madam Chair. AB 46 was again brought forward by this committee on behalf of the Office of Historic Preservation. Bill was heard in committee on February 15th. AB 46 transfers certain responsibilities for historical markers. There was an amendment presented. The Office of Historic Preservation of DCNR proposed an amendment to, instead of as the bill is originally written, assign the responsibility for the installation, maintenance, and repair of historical markers to the Nevada Division of State Parks. The amendment is attached in the work session document, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to amend to do pass. I have a motion from Assemblymember Bilbray Axelrod and a second from, sorry, I missed that, from Assemblymember DeLong. Any comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed, nay? Okay, that was amended and do pass unanimously, and I will ask Assemblymember Bilbray Axelrod to read the floor statement, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last bill on your work session document for this evening is AB 109. Bill was brought forward by Assemblymember LaRue Hatch and others. The bill relates to the Healthy Soils Initiative within the State Conservation Commission, and the bill also included an appropriation. There were two amendments to the bill. The bill amendments are from the primary sponsor, Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, in consultation with the Conservation District, and it changes the recipient of the $200,000 appropriation from the State General Fund to instead go to the Conservation District Program of the Department of Conservation Natural Resources. And the other amendment also adds Assembly Members Gorlow and Summer Armstrong as co-sponsors to the measure.
Committee, do we have any questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from the Vice Chair and a second from Assemblymember Gur. Do we have any comments? Okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say from a policy perspective, I'm very supportive of this bill. Do have some reservations about the appropriations, hoping that it is a one-time shot to invigorate the program. I will vote in favor of it, but, yeah, I will vote in favor of it.
Thank you. So with that, I am looking, so with that, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, and the motion passes unanimously, and I will ask Assemblymember LaRue Hatch to read the floor statement. So with that, we will open up our hearing on Assembly Bill 220. Assembly Bill 220 revises provisions relating to water conservation. And when you're ready, Assemblymember Watts, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I am Howard Watts. I have the pleasure of representing Assembly District 15 in the heart of Clark County, and it is my pleasure to present Assembly Bill 220 for your consideration today. AB 220 was yet another recommendation from the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. It was recommended from the Subcommittee on Public Lands. It cleared both of those committees with unanimous support. And really, the primary aim of Assembly Bill 220 is to continue to advance Southern Nevada's leadership in water conservation across the region. As you know, and I'm not going to spend time rehashing some of the statistics that were provided during the Water Authority's presentation, about the situation we found ourselves in along the Colorado River Basin. But suffice it to say, it is critical that we continue to push to be on the leading edge when it comes to water conservation. And that's really what AB 220 does. It builds on a long history of action from local government and at the state level, including last legislative session when this body passed the first of its kind law leading to the removal of non-functional turf in Southern Nevada over the next few years. And really what we're focused on is trying to continue to get that trajectory that so many have heard about, where over the last several decades, even as the population and the economy of Southern Nevada has grown, its consumptive water use has gone down. Really that's happened by us focusing on those consumptive uses of water and utilizing our water recycling system to continue to try and close that loop more and more. we're never going to get to, well, I shouldn't say never, but it's going to be a long ways away till we get to 100% closed loop system for water recycling. But the more that we can do to address those consumptive uses of water and increase the measures that we use to capture and recycle water, the more that we can ensure the resilience of our community in Southern Nevada. Having taken some actions to address irrigation of grass, that was the number one, and that's why Southern Nevada has, for a long time, started with voluntary conservation incentives and has now moved down the path of setting some policies, both at the local level to prevent the installation of turf in new development, as well as our state policy working to remove existing decorative turf from non-residential properties. And AB 220 has some measures to continue to make sure that we drive down our water usage when it comes to turf and are using our water resources as smart as possible while preserving key recreational opportunities and other needs. In addition, having tackled turf to a large extent, looking at how we get our gallons per capita per day consumptive usage down to meet our goals. Loss to septic systems is another major factor. Over time, as the valley has grown, we've seen once kind of rural areas now be surrounded by the urban footprint, and we actually have thousands, and I'm sure the Water Authority will provide some of that background, thousands upon thousands of septic systems within the Las Vegas Valley, within the service territory of the Southern Nevada Water Authority member agencies. So one of the things that AB 220 is seeking to do is, again, which is another reoccurring theme throughout this session, harness some of the new federal infrastructure funding, as well as put together some other resources to assist homeowners that have septic systems and are close to our wastewater system to connect to that wastewater system. That has dual benefits. One, it addresses potential growing water quality issues within the groundwater in the Las Vegas Valley. But second, by connecting into that wastewater system, they're connected into our water recycling system and preventing that consumptive loss of water. So that has tremendous opportunity. And then finally, I think the big picture, AB 220 seeks to give the Water Authority and our local governments the flexibility they need to respond quickly if the situation in the Colorado River system declines. As you know, our body does not meet very frequently. One of the things that I've consistently heard over the last few years from folks across the Colorado River community is we didn't think it would get this bad this quickly. And a series of actions have had to be taken and are continuing to be sought to address some of those issues. I'm very concerned about us having to wait until a legislative session convenes to be able to further address some of these issues. And so it gives our water providers the flexibility to make sure that key public safety and health needs are met if we end up in a situation where, due to shortages and reductions on water use across the river, we have to decide what uses to prioritize. So that, again, at a high level is what the bill is seeking to do. We've done some tremendous things in Southern Nevada and across the state to lead in water conservation. And I think it provides so many benefits to the resiliency of our community, as well as to economic development and sustainability and innovation. And this is yet another step forward as we continue to look at new policy options and new technologies to continue our leadership in that area. And most importantly, for me, speaking as the chair of the interim committee, It's also an important signal to other urban communities throughout the region of what they can explore to improve their conservation practices. And it's a sign to every other sector across the Colorado River Basin that we are not going to wait for others. We will take the lead and work to reduce our consumptive use of water. And if everyone else takes on similar initiatives, we will be able to sustain our community and communities across the Colorado River Basin for future generations. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Colby Pellegrino and Andy Belanger from the Water Authority to provide additional details about the bill, after which we'd be glad to answer any questions members of the committee may have.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee, and thank you, Assemblyman Watts. For the record, I'm Colby Pellegrino, the Deputy General Manager of Resources for the Southern Nevada Water Authority. I think Assemblyman Watts did a fabulous job of giving an overview of the bill and the need, so I'll just hit on a few high points really quickly, and then I'm going to turn this over to Andy to walk through in a little bit more detail the bill. As temperatures increase across the Southwest, we are seeing less consistent flow on the Colorado River. For every 1 degree of warming that we experience, we anticipate a 5% decrease in runoff in the basin. Because the atmosphere is warming, that means more water is evaporating before it makes it into the system, and our soils are drier, soaking up more water on its way from the mountains into our reservoirs. If we look back at this current drought of 23 years, only of the last 23 years, 15 of those years have been below average, leaving Lake Mead at nearly 28% full. Lake Mead is the source of water for 7 out of every 10 Nevadans, making up 90% of that community's water supply. Where we sit today in Lake Mead is at elevation 1047, which is within a Tier 2 shortage. There are 3 shortage levels currently defined. If Lake Mead drops below elevation 1025, we are subject to future cuts of an unknown magnitude. Those are currently being negotiated amongst the 7 states right now and developed through an environmental impact process with the Bureau of Reclamation. But the future is stark. We could be dipping below elevation 1000 by the summer of 2024. So we need to continue to take every action that we can to reduce demands. And that's going to require participation not only from the state of Nevada, but from every state and every sector. We've spent a tremendous amount of time and energy and resources stretching our small supply of the Colorado River water, but we need to do more, because the stark reality of our current situation is what we are marking as the driest 23 years of the last 100 may very well be the wettest 23 years of the next 100 years we experience. We don't know what the future holds, but we know one thing for certain, and that is that we will need to continue to use less water along with everyone else on the Colorado River. Again, Assemblyman Watts did a great job discussing the elements of this bill, but it's looking at firming up all of those consumptive uses of water, making some slight modifications as it relates to the initiatives we did during the last sessions relative to non-functional turf, and also making those same definitions of non-functional turf durable in the future. It's prohibiting septic systems and establishing an orderly transition for the septic systems that exists. It's also looking at how we address water systems in outlying areas, making modest changes to Nevada water law related to revocable permits, and establishing changes through the groundwater management program for a septic conversion program for our well owners, all of which will help make Southern Nevada's water future more sustainable. Andy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Andy Belanger with Southern Nevada Water Authority. I'm going to do the section by section on the bill, and I apologize in advance. It's a 38-page water bill. I don't know that I've ever seen one this long in my career doing this, but I'll try to move as quickly as I can. So Section 1 of the bill.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're working from the amendment.
Yes,
Correct?
so I will
So-
speak to the conceptual amendment that should be in Nellis, and I'll refer to the original bill provisions that are in there as well. I'll marry the two together.
Okay, thank you.
So on the first page of the conceptual amendment, Section 1, this is the provision that relates to the health district and requires the health district to connect to the community sewage disposal system by January 1st, 2054, properties that are within 400 feet of a community sewage disposal system. I want to make clear that this provision is designed to extend the lines in the streets. So it's not 400 feet radius from the line. It's 400 feet to actually get the sewage to, or the sewer lines to the property. So, you know, the property may be within 400 feet, but it would take 800 feet to get to the sewer. That person would not be affected by this bill. And so the clarifying amendments that you see in green are designed to address that. We received text from the Clark County Water Reclamation District to make sure that that's clear. And then we received some feedback from the Health District on how this first section, subsection of Section 1, interacts with the second section, because the second section requires people within 400 feet to then connect. So it's not in the draft that you have, but rather than saying by January 1st, 2054, we might change that to say no later than, so that it's clear that that's an outside limit, and that properties would then be required to connect once the sewer lines get within 400 feet of their property. Subsection 2 requires the health district to review each septic permit on or before July 1st, 2025, and every 5 years thereafter to determine if a property is within 400 feet. And if the property is within 400 feet, they would then notify the property owner that they have to connect. Originally, the bill had 365 days in there. In consultation with the health district, we're recommending that we increase that to 730 days, so 2 full years. I know it says 720, but that's what you get when a liberal arts major tries to do math and double things. So apologize for that. So after the 2 years, that's when the health district they would have to connect within that time frame. On the second page, you see subsection 4. The bill also requires the health district establish a program to pay not less than 50% of the costs of connection. That is similar to what we did with the Las Vegas Valley Groundwater Management Program when we created the well conversion program. That program provides well owners with no less than 50% and up to 85%. So we didn't put an upper limit in this bill because there may be situations where we want to provide 100% of the cost of connection based upon the need of a septic owner. But we want to have a minimum of 50% of the cost of connection covered through a funding program. We are working with the health district to secure state and federal funds for this program, in addition to the fee that can be imposed by the health district pursuant to subsection 3. But we anticipate there will be a suite of funding available for this program. And I know the health district's a bit concerned at a requirement that they have to provide 50% of the costs of the connection. But we are committed to working with them to make sure that we secure federal and state funding for that program. Subsection 4 requires the health district to adopt regulations to prioritize properties where the sewer is right adjacent to the property line. It authorizes them to grant a one-time 5-year extension if there's not sufficient funding at any time for the program, so that they can manage the flow of these types of systems as they come in. In consultation with the realtors, we added a provision to this section as well to allow the health district to enter into agreements with counties and cities to establish special improvement districts and local improvement districts, or excuse me, landscape improvement districts, to help fund these as well. And then finally, we added a provision that says that the health district may revoke a septic permit if a person is failing to pay the fee and require their immediate connection. So that's all of section 1. There's a lot in there, and it's probably the meatiest part of this bill. The next, the section 2 is just conforming language related to that. Section 3, 4, and 5 are provisions that have to do with development that's not adjacent to an existing water system. And this is a provision that in our original draft, we would have struck a requirement that local governing bodies assume responsibility for public water systems that are in the county and far away from the public water system. We are retaining, at least in part, some of that framework. And so what you see in orange is language that we had originally struck from the bill that's now being included. That language still requires the local governing body to receive sufficient surety to ensure that the continued maintenance and operation of those outlying water systems, but it no longer establishes the same assumption of responsibility that was in the existing statute. In exchange for that, it requires a new section. It says, if there's a default by the builder or developer, the local governing body shall, at its sole and exclusive obligation, use the surety that's provided to pay a certified water system operator to maintain and to operate and maintain the water system. This provision is necessary so that the state's interest is protected and that the residents out there, their interest is protected without putting the local governing body on the hook for a bunch of additional costs. We don't want to necessarily be required to extend the water line to outlying areas or construct new facilities. We shouldn't put our ratepayers on the hook to pay for finding a new source of water for that community, or to expend resources or extend credit for those outlying water systems that need to be that are being proposed. So that provision establishes a criteria. It puts some framework around the existing language about operation and maintenance, but it does it in a way that I think protects the existing rate base of a community while permitting some of these developments to be constructed. You see in subsection 6 of section 4 that we're retaining most of that language, but we're also adding language that requires that surety be replenished or augmented so that the homeowners that are involved in that community have the obligation to provide for their own water system. We think this is a proper way to ensure that those small water systems that are proposed can continue to be built while ensuring the protection of the water system in general. Section 5 is conforming language. It retains much of what was struck in the original AB 220, and that really concludes that section of the bill. Section 6, 20, 22, and 24 are the provisions that relate to the Water Sense program. And what these provisions do is it adds to the existing statute that requires the most efficient plumbing fixtures, that it also now includes landscape irrigation fixtures. And so you'll see in section 6, 20, 22, and 24 that that's changed to require the WaterSense landscape irrigation fixtures to be used. We did make one modification to the existing language in those sections. There was a provision that exempted out landscape irrigation fixtures that were over 50 years old, and while that makes sense to maintain indoor plumbing fixtures because of return flow credits, there's really no good policy to have an old water system, old pipes and old sprinklers, just because they're over 50 years old. So you will see that change that we made in those sections. Sections 7 and 10 changed the requirement for water service from the 400 feet that were in the original bill to 1,250 feet. We wanted to make it clear that on the water side, that you have 1,250 feet before you're required to connect to the water system. On the sewer side, because of the expense, 400 feet is the standard. And so these were just provisions where it says 400, but it should have been 1,250 feet because that then keeps it consistent. And you see that in Section 7 and Section 10. Sections 8, 9, and 11 of the bill make conforming changes to city and county code related to septic to make sure that those are consistent. And then the next part of the bill that I want to discuss, the next big topic, is Sections 12 through 19 and Section 21. These provisions of the statute are specific to tentative maps and final maps for new development. We want to make sure that as properties, as parcels are being considered by the planning and zoning agencies, that there's also a concurrent review by the supplier of water to ensure that there's a sufficient water supply for those communities. And so these sections of law will make sure that the cities and the counties, they still retain the planning and zoning authority, but the water, the supplier of water, the source of water will review and verify that there's sufficient water for that development. So the next section that I haven't talked about yet is Section 23. And Section 23 of the bill relates to the capital improvement grants that are funded through by the state and administered by the Board for Financing Water Projects. We received some feedback from both the Nevada Division of Water Resources and NDEP that you can see on the conceptual amendment on page 32. The first is that the state engineer wanted to make sure that the costs associated with plugging and abandoning a well were covered, and so you see that both in the blue and in a new subsection 3, the cost of plugging and abandoning a well and connecting the property formerly served by the well is a covered cost in that program. Section 25 of the bill was a provision that addressed NRS 534-110. It changed a may to a shall, and we received a lot of feedback from the Farm Bureau, from Republic Services, from rural counties that that might not be the appropriate thing to do at this time. And so that provision is deleted from the conceptual amendment. We'll retain the existing language in 534-110. So we appreciate the feedback we received on that. NRS 534-120, Section 26 of the bill, addresses the ability of the state engineer to issue temporary permits to appropriate groundwater. Now, these are not mine dewatering permits that are governed by a separate section of NRS. That's NRS 534-050. But this was a provision that was put into the statute in 1955 that allowed Las Vegas to continue to grow until the water facilities at Lake Mead were constructed. And so this provision returns Section 26, this provision returns it to what it looked like in 1999, before some of the changes that were made. Because what happened in 1999 when this change was put into the statute is it really handcuffed the state engineer's ability to manage groundwater in the Las Vegas basin. And so in conversation with them, we wanted to make sure that the state engineer had greater flexibility to deal with water issues with temporary permits. And so you'll see in the new language that pursuant to the new subsection 4, in any designated basin, the state engineer may do the things that are already listed in statute. And there's a new subsection 5 that then says, in an area in which have been issued temporary permits pursuant to subsection 3, the state engineer shall then deny, limit, prohibit. And so it makes it mandatory in the Las Vegas basin, which is an area where there have been temporary permits issued, but not in other parts of the state. It's still enabling there. And we then put in a provision of this section that required the state engineer to adopt regulations setting forth the new requirements, because the ones that were in statute are being removed. Section 27 of the bill, we're removing a provision in that section that limits the state engineer's ability to plug wells because if the cost is more than $200. Now, this is a policy decision for the legislature, but a $200 limit that's in statute is effectively a ban. If you want to ban them, but a $200 limit just precludes the state engineer from doing his job of plugging wells in basins where it may make sense to do that. And so, we want to make sure the state engineer has the tools necessary to address the dry conditions that exist within Nevada. And by removing that $200 limit, it gives him that flexibility. We are proposing in the conceptual amendment a new section 27.5 to amend NRS 538-171 to require the Colorado River Commission to approve any change to, in addition to place of diversion, manner of use, or place of use of water, any change in entitlement holder. So we want to make sure that Nevada's Colorado River allocation is protected and that the Colorado River Commission approves any change in that case. And also it expands the criteria that the state engineer would use in reviewing that by removing the reference to subsection 3 of NRS 533-370 and then allowing all of 533-370 to be the criteria. Section 28 is probably the most consequential part of the bill. It defines the general manager of the water authority as the general manager of the water authority. So Section 29 of the bill is a lot of the stuff that Assemblyman Watts mentioned. So this first provision there, 38.2, authorizes the Southern Nevada Water Authority Board of Directors to limit each single-family residence that uses the water of the Colorado River to a half-acre foot of water during federally declared shortages. There's no plan to do that in the short term, but given the conditions on the river, we want to make sure that we have the ability to do that before coming back to the legislature in 2 years. Just incidentally, the number of properties that affects is roughly 20%. The top 20% of our water users use more than a half-acre foot. So the average customer in the Las Vegas Valley uses 130,000 gallons per year, and a half-acre foot is 163,000 gallons per year. So for nearly probably 80% of our customer base, they would not see an impact of this section. But it does address those top 20% of customers who are using more water and have not made the changes necessary to protect our community's water supply. Section 38.4, still in Section 29, makes it clear that the provisions of this bill that prohibit new septic systems is specifically tied to uses or will, to properties that use or will use the waters of the Colorado River. So I want to make it clear, this section that bans new septics does not apply to well owners. It only applies to septic systems that have a connection to the municipal supply. It doesn't impact the rural parts of Clark County where septic systems should still be constructed. So, Overton, Searchlight, some of those areas that aren't connected to the Colorado River, they would still be allowed to do septics. This only prohibits septics, new septics, in the valley where the Colorado River is the supply of water for those customers. It sets forth a waiver requirement for the general manager as well, and then section, you'll see at the top of page 44 on the conceptual amendment that we wanted to add a provision that it does not also apply to any decreed, certified, or permitted right to appropriate water that's diverted from the Virgin or the Muddy River. So both are tributaries to the Colorado River, and we wanted to make certain that that was clear as well. So we worked in consultation with Warren Hardy to make sure that that provision got put into the conceptual amendment. You see in section 38.6 that this section prohibits new turf on any parcel or property served by the Colorado River, and it does provide an exemption for warm season turf in parks, schools, and cemeteries. It also creates a waiver provision as well for that. Section 30 of the bill establishes a water efficiency monitoring program that the authority would work to establish over the next year or so, and it's designed to address non-single family residential uses that have 20,000 square feet of turf. So think parks, think golf courses, think functional turf that has a lot of water use. We want to make sure that they're using their water, which they should be using, in the most efficient way. And so it just creates a program that they will participate. In talking with MGM, there was some concern about the time frame, so we had a provision not later than January 1st of 2024. Notify the owners of any parcel. We're recommending that that be changed to January 1st of 2025 so that we give an additional year before we stand up that program. Section 39 of the bill makes changes to AB 356 from last session. These changes just make it very clear that the only exemption from the non-functional turf requirement is property that is used as a single-family residence, not property that's zoned. We were hearing from some HOAs that that didn't want to make the changes, that, well, all of this other stuff was zoned for single-family residence, and we want to make it clear that the exemption is only for the property that's used as a single-family residence. Section 32 of this bill, these are the provisions that relate to the Las Vegas Valley Groundwater Management Program. Section 32 and 33 authorize the Water Authority to use the funds from the groundwater management fee for a septic conversion program. And then finally, Section 34, in consultation with the the Vegas Chamber of Commerce, makes changes to the emergency powers provision that we have in here. Requires the Board of Directors of the Water Authority. They can establish by resolution the authority, give the authority to the general manager to restrict water use. But if they do so, any sort of restrictions have to be ratified by the Water Authority Board within 15 calendar days. And then you see Section 35, that's related to subsection, or to Section 1 of the bill. Section 36 is the effective date. We would propose that the health district provisions related to establishing a program and imposing a fee be effective immediately, but delay the implementation of that section for 2 years so that everyone has some time to get used to this new approach. Section 26, which has to do with the temporary permits, we'd propose that that also be effective on July 1st, 2025, and that the remainder of the bill be effective upon passage and approval. And I am ready for questions that you might have, and I apologize for the length of time it took to go through that.
Thank you for the presentation. I think you did that quite quickly. Okay, I have questions from Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the, I guess I'm showing my age, but the Cliff Notes version of an already novel-like bill. That was great, though. Well done. I have 2 or 3 questions, so is that okay? Great. My first question comes from, actually, page 1. Don't worry, I'm not going to go page by page. Under section 1, 2.1, was the extension of the timeframe based upon the health department's request, was that due to staffing, or was that due to other elements such as research and/or other items of concern?
This is Andy Belanger for the record. My understanding is that the health district had some concerns about standing the program up and making sure that there wasn't a bottleneck. There are 15,000 properties, 15,000 properties in the Las Vegas Valley that are on septics. There are about 5,000 of those that have municipal water service. And they want to make sure that they have the time and the resources to ensure that there's enough time for that to occur, which is also why we added that provision for the 5-year extension, so that there is time and that we can prioritize the ones that make the most sense.
Thank you for that, because that totally makes sense to have that length of time. My next question, if I may, Chair, is on page 16. So I don't even know what section 14 it looks like. You mentioned the need for a final map. I just, as a joke from something we heard earlier, that doesn't need to be on vellum, right? But more importantly, can that map, as well as, I think there's another area, I believe it's in section 6, I believe it's on the next page, where there's supposed to be some sort of comment in writing. Can that final map be done electronically, or is the as well as the certificate? Or is the intent to have that be a hard copy, something that is physically in front of individuals?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy Belanger for the record. My understanding is that a lot of those processes have moved digital, and so the comments can be done in the format that that those are allowed, and that could be digital.
Thank you for the clarification. I know it seems like really devil's in the details, but let's be realistic, sometimes it is. My next question, and I promise I only have one more after this, comes from page 37. And it has to do with section 3, with the issuing of temporary permits. My question has to do with what is the definition of temporary? There are some that believe that is months. There are some that also believe it is years. So I know that this is current language, but just wanted a little bit more clarification about what your interpretation is of temporary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy Belanger for the record. So this provision was put into the statute in 1955. And so the way that it operates in the Las Vegas Valley is that any permit that's granted after March 24th, 1955 was issued with a revocable permit, a temporary permit pursuant to this section. There are roughly 1,700 community wells that exist in the Las Vegas Valley pursuant to a temporary permit that were granted sometime between March 24th, 1955 and sometime in 1992, when the state stopped issuing temporary permits in the Las Vegas Valley. And those permits are still in use today, even though the municipal water system may surround the property. So this really highlights that concern is we created a temporary situation in the statute that is, 70 years or so in the making. So,
Final question, but wow, 70-year, okay. My final question, if I may, I promise, is from page 45. And although that last answer, I've got like so many follow-ups, but we could do that offline. My last one, again, has to do with page 45. It's under section 39.53. The general manager or his or her designee may approve an extension of water from the provisions explained, but is there a timeline process? I know that in another area, there's a mentioning of the state engineer having to give a decision or a denial within a certain number of days. Is that also the plan in this area, or is that something that's going to be decided upon internally?
thank you, Andy Belanger, for the record. So I think what we want to make sure we have in this section is some flexibility, because we don't know every situation that this could apply to. We want to make sure that there is the ability to do a waiver if, for instance, there's a nuance that isn't covered in this bill that we want to make sure we address. And frankly, it's similar to what we did with the non-functional turf bill last year, is that we established under the statute, we established what the definitions were, but we created a waiver process so that you could address some of those really, things that don't fit neatly in a box.
Thank you for all those clarifications, and thank you, Chair, for that much time.
Assemblymember Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two quick questions. I think they'll be quick. I was wondering, when I see 50%, that's great, but, those areas, while they're not in my district, that Section 10, Section 11, I'm thinking of, have been in families for a long time. So I think we have this idea that they have a lot of money and disposable income, but I happen to know for a fact that that's not always the case. They just could have purchased the home a long time ago. So I feel better about the timeline, right? But I'm just curious what the cost of conversion is currently from septic to.
So this is Andy Belanger for the record. The cost really varies depending upon a lot of different factors, whether the sewer is right in front of the property, whether it's far, whether everybody's converting at the same time, or whether we're doing them one at a time. Because the cost we're seeing now when they're one at a time is high. Tens of thousands of dollars, which is why the program has the at least 50% language in there. But if you have the ability to bring them all together and do them all at once, the cost of cutting streets and doing all of the other components associated with a septic conversion program, you start to see those costs come down. And so we can get you an estimate of what the costs are. We're in the process of working through a pilot program right now, but we're happy to get that information to you.
And just on that same note, so are you doing, or will you do after, are you going to be talking to communities and trying to encourage them to do it all at once, so it's kind of a one-shot?
Yes, Andy Belanger for the record. That's really one of the reasons why the 400-foot requirement is in there, is so that similarly situated neighbors are going to be affected at the same time. And so you can do neighborhoods all at once. And even those that fall outside of that 400 feet, that maybe are 450 feet or 500 feet, we want to encourage those as well to do it at that time. And so we'll make sure that there's plenty of outreach in conjunction with the health district and all of the parties that are working through this.
And my final thing was, are there any issues, because I know some of those lots are very, very large, and I know you kind of talked about 20% using the majority. I know, we just recently, the Water Authority okayed the provision that new pool construction can't be a certain depth. I happen to know there's pretty darn big, deep pools. And is that going to be of concern with the amount of water that when they move to off septic? Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Watts for the record. That's a great question. And again, I think it's important to understand that for the vast majority of residents, even those with older homes, larger lots, larger pools, they're still going to be in that 80% of people who would not be affected at all. I think it's also important to note that this isn't something that's going to be implemented tomorrow, and so there would be a lot of conversation about how this gets implemented. And then, the key thing is we want to make sure that when someone turns on their shower or flushes their toilet, that it operates, or that when they turn on the sink for drinking water, that it comes out. And so if we get to this point with folks that fall into that upper 20% of use, honestly, I think there's a lot of community awareness and demand for more conservation measures in Southern Nevada. And so that's going to be a time when I think there will be ample communication and outreach to the community about, for example, okay, you're going to have to let your lawn go brown so that we can make sure that all of those other critical needs are met. So it's more about providing, again, that flexibility at the local level to help manage the use for some of those nice to have uses, so that the need to haves are preserved for everyone.
I'm just going to jump in here to follow along with Assemblymember Bilbray Axelrod's question about cost. Is there any reason besides cost that someone wouldn't want to do the conversion?
Hi, this is Colby Pellegrino for the record. Thank you, Assemblywoman. I think that generally what we hear is kind of the off-the-grid. People feel like they have more independence. The reality is septic systems require independent maintenance on behalf of the property owner. They restrict the use of that property because you can't build anything over a septic tank. And they create water quality issues that affect everyone's public health and safety. So in my experience, we have more people reaching out saying, I want to get rid of my septic tank, than people saying, let me keep my septic tank. In the long term, sewer rates are likely to be cheaper than the cost of maintaining the septic system if you're properly maintaining the denitrification the way you should.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Assemblymember Brown May.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need longer arms. I'm sorry. I just have to say how awesome it is that your last name is Pellegrino and that you work for water. Okay, so fun. My question is really relative to the 400 feet, and I just want to understand this a little bit better. It's about the septic system and municipal water. And at one point, you talked about 15,000 properties in the Las Vegas Valley are on septic, 5,000 municipal water, right? 5,000 of those 15,000. And so we're talking about this conversion of having access to municipal water and converting off of a septic system. Can you tell me a little bit about what does that look like in some of those more rural communities where they're on community well water and they each have septic systems? What does that look like in this bill?
So, Madam Chair, this is Andy Belanger for the record. In response to that question, I would say that for those properties that are farther than 400 feet, that are in legitimately, the rural parts of Clark County, this bill does nothing to them, right? They'll keep their well, they'll keep their septic. But if they're in the middle of town and they're on a septic, the statutes have been relatively clear for decades that they should have been connecting when they got close enough to the municipal sewer. That hasn't happened for a variety of reasons. This bill rectifies that within the urban core of the Las Vegas Valley. That's really important because of what Colby mentioned as it relates to water quality. There are segments where you have a big number of these septic systems, and there could be nitrate issues. There could be other water quality issues associated with that many septics in that small of an area. And so this bill really protects those properties that are on the outskirts of town where water and sewer aren't necessarily going to be anywhere close to them in the next, decade or two, they're not going to be affected by this bill. They'll be able to keep their well, be able to keep their septic. But for those that are within the urban core, it creates that framework where they can transition.
This is Colby Pellegrino. If I could just add to the provision for connecting to municipal water has always been a further distance than sewer. So the municipal water system is going to be in places that the sewer system is not. You're not going to find the reverse because code has always worked that way, that it's a longer distance to connect to the municipal water system than it is to the sewer system.
Thank you. Follow-up, Madam Chair? Thank you. I appreciate that. So I just want to be clear that we're talking about in the urban core, can we just picture inside the 215 Beltway around the entire Las Vegas Valley? Are we talking about that?
Howard Watts for the record. Without speaking too much for the Water Authority and without having looked at all the maps myself, again, it kind of depends. There are some areas with that more rural character, and so it really comes back to that distance and making sure that, again, that it's not just dropping a point on a map and drawing a circle. It's understanding where is that property's service terminating into a septic, and where is the closest sewer line, and can you draw a 400-foot line to that? There may be some communities even inside that beltway area that you described that still have that more rural character, larger lots, not connected, and so maybe some on the outskirts would fall under the provisions of this, but some that are further inside would not. So again, really what it's focused on is where it's logistically and cost effectively, the kind of the best bang for our buck now. So it's still gonna be a mix even within that kind of urban core area, depending on the dynamics of an individual property and on the dynamics of a community as a whole.
Assemblymember Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate what you're trying to do here with this bill. My question is more of a real estate focus. Once the program's in place and property starts converting to the new sewer system, what and how do you envision the disposal of the septic tank on the property is to occur, and who will bear the legal and financial liability of decommissioning the septic tank? Excuse me, something in this building in the afternoon, I just lose my voice. Can't imagine what it is. Will it be the homeowner or your local jurisdictions? If borne by the property owner, will local government hold harmless the property owner? And that's segmented, so if you didn't quite get all of it, because I staggered through it, let me know and I'll say it again. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, Andy Belanger for your record. I think that that's really up to the health district and their regulations. But there are scenarios where you would abandon the septic tank in place, and that would be significantly cheaper than requiring the homeowner to remove the septic system in its entirety. And so I think it'll depend on the specific situation in that property, but being able to allow them to abandon in place is probably going to be the most cost-effective way to do it. Now, as it relates to liability and hold harmless and all of that, I think that's a question that I don't have the answer to right here, but I can certainly get back to you on.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for answering all of our many questions today. I have two questions, and I won't say that they're short because I don't think there's anything short in this bill. But my first question starts on page 16, talking about those maps as far as water availability goes. And I understand the intention of that, right? As we are having our governing bodies approve new developments, we want to make sure there's actually water there for those developments. But my question is, what happens if those governing bodies choose to ignore those maps and do it anyway? Are we just hoping that they will look at this and common sense will prevail, or is there something that mandates that they don't approve if there is not water available?
Thank you for that question. Howard Watts for the record. One of the things I will say is that the state historically has been a little bit more proactive than other areas in terms of, the state engineer also reviews when they are looking at subdivision maps to grant. In this case, we're looking at water providers who already manage a water portfolio and are responsible to provide that water service, and making sure that a similar process is in place. And really, I understand where the question is coming from. There's a lot of history of us in the past moving forward projects without making sure that the resource is there. What I could say now is that particularly with our large water providers, they have public, transparent, 50-year resource plans, and I think the place that this provision is coming from is certainly from one of making sure that we don't ever want to end up in a position where we have approved, where a development has moved forward that we don't have a sustainable water source identified for. And so that is the purpose of this, and really strengthening the language by putting it in here is the goal. So I would say that is the intent, is that if the water resource is not there, that map will not be approved.
Thank you. And my second question is on page 43. So let me flip through our novel here. So on 43, I'm looking at section 29 and then how it aligns with section 34, because it says that if there is a declared shortage on the Colorado River, then we're going to restrict single-family homes. So the first part of my question is, why is that only single-family homes? But then how does that tie in with section 34, where it says if there's a shortage that you can restrict use in general? Why do we need both of those separate sections?
Thank you for that question. Howard Watts for the record. I'll start with the first provision. So one of the things that I want to make sure is known to this body is we had a discussion about some similar issues in the legislature and past policy related to domestic wells. One of the things that we were concerned about was that domestic wells have a priority date, and we are concerned that in the event that a curtailment occurs, folks could lose access to all of the water to their properties. And so we actually ensured that in such an instance, 0.5 acre feet of that entitlement to that domestic well would be preserved for those key needs. So could that impact some of their landscape irrigation, other uses? Yes, but we would always make sure that they had water to drink and for those basic needs. And so this is similarly modeled and focused on those residential uses with that very specific number that we believe is appropriate to meet not even the basic. I mean, this meets, again, most needs. It exceeds the full needs of most customers within southern Nevada. And that has a very specific amount of water tied to it. And so the other section is you can't necessarily do that for a commercial customer because the water needs are so varied. And so my understanding is that the other provision gives the flexibility to try and adjust the water footprint of other users down, but you can't use the same kind of policy template that you use for residential use, which is a lot kind of easier to wrap your head around and understand what the core needs are.
This is Andy Belanger for the record. I'd also just, in addition to everything Howard or Assemblyman Watts said, I'd just note that the Section 34 also allows for the restriction of water use if emergency conditions exist, or if there's a delivery system issue, you're unable to deliver water. That might be a localized issue that you want to address, or you might have, a water system go down in the middle of the summer that you need to restrict water usage in a specific area. So it's broader, and it gives a little more authority there under the conditions that are outlined in that provision.
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate those answers. So then, just to clarify, if one of these other situations happens, like the localized situation, would it be possible that residential homes could go below that half acre? Or are you saying that is the baseline, no matter what, we are protecting that, and then the other situations are flexible?
Hi, this is Colby Pellegrino for the record. We have most of our customers below that. And generally, when you look across the West at the communities that have had to do this sort of thing, you see a mix of general restrictions, which say, for example, something like you can't use water outdoors, or you need to limit your irrigation to 1 day a week. And then once you've done that, you still can't be using more than this amount. So it really is setting the ceiling for those large property owners. It's not guaranteeing that amount for anyone using less.
Committee, do we have any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Assemblymember Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry. I might not have hit send on my instant message. Thank you for being here. It's good to see you all. Okay, so I served on natural resources and public land, so I remember the recommendation. Although I have to admit, I don't know that this looks exactly like what I thought was going to be recommended, particularly on the water side, not outside of the septic tanks. But couple things regarding my experience in that. Full disclaimer: we own a plumbing company. We do septic tanks. We don't do them a ton, but we will do sewer line connections to city sewers, things like that. So to my colleague, Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod, regarding cost, I can give you an outdated cost, and we could add for inflation, but Washoe County dealt with this issue back in the mid-2000s, and there had been a push to convert a section out in Spanish Springs to 1 acre lots that were on septic tanks to go and to be hooked up. And the estimates then were about $22,000 for the hookup. So move forward, inflation, cost of materials, cost of labor, it is a hefty chunk of change. Glad to see there's no less than 50%. Did I get that right in the? So yes, cost is a concern. I brought this question up with some of the people from Southern Nevada Water Authority. I appreciate coming to my office, talking to me at length. See a lot of, I understand the intent behind it, but I've always had a problem with the jurisdictional issue, and I was very transparent about that with last session with the turf bill. Could see it, I get it, but I live in northern Nevada. My water issues are different. We water our lawns. It kind of will percolate back down. Didn't feel like I should be telling what Southern Nevada people do with their turf. You guys know it better than we do up here. Same thing with septic tanks. I'm just, you've got to sell me on the idea of how come you're not at the county commission. So much of the language we're looking at dealing with, these issues seem to be more of a county issue. I know there's some issues that had been explained to me about trying to work with, all the different municipalities within the county. But you've got to get me past being uncomfortable telling septic tank and landowners in Clark County what to do from the state.
Thank you for that question. Howard Watts for the record. I appreciate that. So 2 thoughts. One, as you mentioned, we're dealing with a lot of different agencies, state and local, and many different municipalities. And so we're trying to address this at the state level so that we can have a holistic response to this issue and do the coordination across all the bodies, including making sure that we've got financial resources from a range of different levels, including federal programs, state assessments, others, to do that. And to me, the only place that we can do that is through state legislation. The one thing that I would say is I understand where you're coming from. When we referred this, it was to really focus the water conservation efforts on Southern Nevada. And so that's why so many of these provisions of the bill have been explicitly targeted to only impact Southern Nevada, and specifically those served by our larger water systems. And the pitch that I would make is to follow the direction of your colleagues from Southern Nevada when the bill hopefully moves forward, and if you see strong support from Southern Nevada legislators for the policy, I'd hope you'd join us in that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And we'll make a deal. We'll do that, and then you do that on the rural issue. So we'll work together. Real quick, if I could jump into Section 34, Section 2.5, number 1. That was when we talk about the curtailment. If there had been during a period in which the federal government has declared a water shortage on the Colorado River. I just want to, now a state can, and this is just generally, I need to be educated here. The federal government would declare an emergency here, but can the state declare an emergency involving the Colorado River? Is it just federal jurisdiction? Because I would think sometimes we might think there's an emergency, but the feds don't think, so can we call that emergency and then do all these things would then apply where we have curtailment on that upper 20% that you mentioned?
Howard Watts for the record. So just to provide a little background on when federal government declaring a shortage is referenced in this. So there are extremely detailed guidelines for the operation of the Colorado River system. And currently, as Lake Mead reaches certain elevations, there were, through some negotiations, some kind of pre-shortage levels where we were working to try and conserve and avoid reaching the shortage, and then we hit shortage levels. And so when the lake's elevation is projected to be at or below certain levels, and then as it continues to decline, that leads to a shortage declaration and cutbacks in the allocations, essentially, of Colorado River water to lower basin states. And so we are currently in a declared shortage. I think the Water Authority is clear that just because we are, there is not the intent to enact these provisions right now because our water supply is still secure. But we want to have the ability, if those levels continue to decline and the lake levels continue to decline, that we have the ability to protect the resource for our community. And so that's really, that's why we're talking about this federal declaration as opposed to, in general, the state could declare an emergency related to that, but this is related to those really specific elevations set by the Bureau of Reclamation, at which point we have to take additional shortages which force conservation among lower basin states on the Colorado River.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to support. We're going to limit testimony to half an hour in support, half an hour in opposition, and half an hour in neutral. I'll be timing with 2 minutes per speaker. And I'll ask, we're going to start in Carson City, we'll move to Las Vegas and also do the phones. And then I'll ask as the seats open up if you'll fill them up. So please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Danny Thompson, THOMPSON, representing the operating engineers. I think the piece that's missing here is that return flow credits. If you're from Clark County, we get 300,000 acre feet a year is our allocation from the Colorado River that dumps into Lake Mead. That's all we get. Arizona gets over 2 million. California gets over 4 million. The only way we survive now is that return flow credits, and that is that you use the water in the sewer system or in the sink, and it is treated and it's put back in the lake, and then for a gallon we put in, we can take another gallon out. The problem with watering grass or with a septic system that is drawing water off of our allocation, we're not getting that return flow credit. And you heard about the elevation of the lake. If the lake falls to, I forget the exact number, but you're going to see a lot more draconian actions than this because it won't be a matter of, do you want to do this? You are going to be forced to do it by the federal government, if not the other states. And so we think this is a reasonable approach to protect that 300,000 acre foot with the return flow credits that we currently survive on now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Candace Townsend from the City of North Las Vegas, and we are in support of AB 220. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Kyle Roerink, Executive Director of the Great Basin Water Network. We support AB 220, and I think it's important to put this in context. When we were working on AB 356 in the last session, a landmark bill to rip up non-functional turf, Lake Mead was 20 feet higher, give or take. A year from now, Lake Mead will likely be 10 feet lower. So the question is, what choices do we really have? Now, with this bill, I think what we could likely gain here is thousands of acre feet and new infrastructure for the community, and what's the worst case scenario here? Well, we still get thousands of acre feet and new infrastructure, but I think also our organization, we focus a lot on water policies throughout the West, and we look at ordinances, we look at statutes. Utah's legislative session just ended. There is no other statutory construct relating to water conservation quite like Nevada's, and I'm kind of hoping and assuming that this passes, but we're really setting the trends, and again, big picture, when we were setting the trend on AB 356 2 years ago, we saw a ripple effect where Utah, quite frankly, was not that good a couple of years ago, and now we see them stepping up, we see others stepping up, and so we think this is really important for the health and wellness of the community and the Colorado River. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Cohen and members of the committee. I am Jana Moan, External Affairs Director for the Nature Conservancy in Nevada, and we are testifying in support of AB 220 with the conceptual amendment that removes the changes in Section 25 from the original bill. Thank you for addressing that. The Nature Conservancy is committed to balancing supplies and demand in the Colorado River, and we applaud SNWA's efforts to do that in the system. Thank you for hearing our comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Rourke, representing the City of Henderson. Henderson is committed to smart growth and sustainability considerations and integrated into the way we do business. Along with SNWA and our Southern Nevada partners, we've been focused on water conservation for more than 2 decades, which has allowed us to grow while still using less water. Last year, we created our Climate Response Initiative, incorporating 14 strategies to reduce the city's consumptive water use, ranging from amplified outreach and education of the community, accelerated removal of non-functional turf, an expanded incentive program, increased watering compliance, and new regulations. We're specifically focused on reducing wasteful outdoor use by ensuring compliance with watering restrictions and removing non-functional turf. As a city, we consumptively used 1.3 billion gallons less water in 2022 than in 2021. The City Council recently approved an amendment this month to the code for a golf course to align SNWA's recommendation for the reduction of golf course water budgets. So we are aligned with SNWA in passing those various regulations. Water conservation efforts are more critical than ever, as we've had many discussions about, and we are committed to the standards that will sustain our community for generations to come. Therefore, the City of Henderson supports AB 220 and the efforts of SNWA to continue finding ways to further conserve water that allow our community to thrive. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christy Cabrera-Georgeson, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Nevada Conservation League here in support of AB 220. Recent polling shows that 94% of Nevadans think the current water shortage is a problem. And while we're grateful for the Southern Nevada Water Authority and the legislators' leadership in implementing strategies like seasonal watering and removing non-functional turf, our work is far from over. With the Colorado River and Lake Mead at historic and dangerously low levels, we need a robust and comprehensive water conservation solution. It's critical that we take action to conserve water whenever possible, and we believe this bill does that. We urge the committee's support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Isaac Hardy, representing Moapa Valley District, Water District, and Virgin Valley Water District. We are in support of AB 220. We also want to thank SNWA for agreeing to a friendly amendment which resolves the concerns we had with the bill. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee. For the record, my name is Steve Walker. I'm representing Eureka County. Eureka County is in support of the intent of AB 220 and would like to continue a dialogue with SNWA on some of the wording. We also appreciate the inclusion of some of our suggestions within the amendment that we have already provided. Thank you.
Hi, Ashley Garza Kennedy, representing Clark County, and I just wanted to say ditto to a lot of my local government colleagues that we are supportive, our board is very supportive of the Water Authority's conservation efforts. Thank you.
Hello, Nina Laxalt, representing Central Nevada Regional Water Authority on behalf of Jeff Fontaine, and we too have made suggestions to the original drafting of this bill, and those have more or less been addressed. We sort of got this amendment late, so we're looking at it quickly. There is one remaining concern, it's small, in the cost. I'm sorry, I had this all figured out until I had to get up here, right? Section 27, and where it takes out the cost, it leads to the $200 cost, and we do believe that those costs, you know, should go up. However, we do think there should be an upper end on that because some of those costs, when they're done out in the rurals, will be much more expensive than they probably are in the cities. So that's it. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Zach Bucher with the City of Las Vegas. Wonderful to be here in Assembly Natural Resources. I believe it's my first time. Can't tell you how excited I am to be here. The city is in support of AB 220. In fact, the City of Las Vegas in our 2050 master plan are doing a lot of the things that are in this bill. Also, we have a draft ordinance at the city that addresses some of these things as well. So we appreciate the presentation today and confirmation on the record that local governments will maintain its planning and zoning responsibilities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick Donnelly with the Center for Biological Diversity. We are in support of AB 220. I think it was pointed out that the last session's turf removal bill really sparked a tidal wave of interest in the use of turf in the desert. And I think right now, with the Colorado River declining, the world is watching what Nevada is going to do, how the driest state in the country is going to respond to a crisis in our water supply. And this bill really takes very important steps toward addressing that crisis. And so I think it could provide a pattern, role model function for the rest of the Colorado River Basin. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support in Carson City? Seeing none, do we have anyone in support in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none. Anyone in support in in Elko? Seeing none, if we can go to the phones, please, BPS.
Provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 220, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Please also remember to state and spell your name for the record when you begin. Good Caller, afternoon, you are Chair. unmuted.
Hi there. So sorry. Good afternoon, Chair Cohen and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Beth Seawald, President and CEO of the Vegas Chamber. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. The Vegas Chamber is in support of Assembly Bill 220 because it effectively balances conservation efforts and water resource needs in Southern Nevada. This bill also allows for sustainable growth and economic development efforts to continue in our community. The Chamber has been a longtime proponent of conservation efforts spearheaded by the Southern Nevada Water Authority. Sound and balanced water policy is critical to all Southern Nevada residents and businesses, and water management affects all components of the economy. It is also essential to community stability and preserving the environment. We believe that this bill is necessary as we enter the 23rd year of drought management along the Colorado River. As you've heard today, this comprehensive water bill addresses issues related to the use of septic tanks, the adoption of water smart standards in new construction, groundwater management, administration of wells, the irrigation of non-functional turf, the participation in a water efficiency monitoring program, and emergency powers that may be used by Southern Nevada Water Authority Board of Directors and General Manager. We are also in support of the conceptual amendment that provides for additional oversight and accountability with the use of the emergency powers. Thank you so much for your time and consideration in supporting Assembly Bill 220. Thank you.
BPS, next caller, please.
One moment, Chair. Caller, please press *6 to unmute.
Thank you. Do I have the floor at this time?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and Board. My name is Bridget Stalvey. The last name is spelled S-O-L-V-I-E. And I live in Clark County in the rural area considered a RNP, preservation area. And I represent a number of homeowners who are very concerned about the prospect of losing their private domestic wells, with the state engineer given more latitude to revoke our permit. And I have questions for my neighbors regarding those that have water rights that they've taken the time and legal effort to purchase, how that will affect their private domestic wells. And further, I have questions and concerns regarding the viability of transitioning an existing septic on a large parcel of property where several homeowners that were built out here in these rural areas design their septics with the lay of the land. So it is very reasonable that some of the septic outs are to the rear of their property and not near a street, where to do a conversion would require complete change of how the land works and the positive or negative flow of sewage down a pipe to get to a connection point in the street. Some of those properties need to be considered. And further, I have real concerns about the fact that, again, our well, a private domestic well, could be forfeited and required to be abandoned and plugged because you remove the language that requires a rig to come on property as the trigger. If our well needs certain kind of repair or maintenance and a rig is put on property, permits are pulled, and that raises the flag that maybe further checking would need to be done. I believe that that language needs to remain in this bill. I am completely respectful of the fact that our area is in a drought, a severe drought situation, but it is notable that those of us on wells do not currently draw from the Colorado River. we draw from natural aquifers. SNWA and several others are building very large quantity holding tank reservoirs, and they're drawing water from the natural aquifers just like we are, therefore depleting at a greater use what I would ever do. So I am in opposition to this bill. I think several points of the language need to be altered and addressed specifically to some of these concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. BPS, do we have anyone else in support?
If you've recently joined the call and would like to testify in support of AB 220, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no more callers to provide support testimony.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we are going to go to opposition. And I will start with opposition in Carson City. Do we have anyone in opposition in Carson City? Okay, seeing none, do we have anyone in opposition in Las Vegas? Please fill up the seats. And then as the seats open up, you can go ahead and fill them in. Whoever wants to go first in Las Vegas, please go ahead. And remember, please keep your comments to 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Meehan, Meehan. I live in the county area of Las Vegas, and my neighborhood, everybody's pretty much on a fixed income. They're retired. I know that you're going to try to help 50%, but you really got to consider some of these people that live in these areas that have septic tanks. It's going to be pretty hard for them to come up with the money, including myself. And I will say on one part, I've been on a septic tank pretty much my whole life. We conserve probably more so on our water usage because we are on a septic tank. As a child, we had a sign in the bathroom. Mom wrote it up. If it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. So I think we are trying to conserve as much as we can. I understand we are in a drought and we have to be there, but I think you have to have consideration for these older people that are on a fixed income, are no way going to have the money to get that done. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person in Las Vegas, please go ahead.
Hello, Madam Chair. Ed Borelli for the record. I've had a septic tank for 15 years now, and it has not cost me one dime to flush my, to use the septic tank does not cost one dime. If the septic tank was gone, all of these people that you're referring to would all now have a sewer bill, which I haven't had a sewer bill in a while, but I'm sure it's pretty high. So not only at the cost of attaching to the sewer system, removing your septic tank, which may or may not happen, that's not very clear. There's the cost of the monthly bill of just being attached to the sewer system that a lot of folks would have to incur. At your 50%, which is great, 50% to help people, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of waiver, and those who are maybe might have a little extra money they've been saving for other things than replacing their sewer system. 10 years ago, as your person spoke, it was $21,000, $22,000 to do a septic tank. Now I'm hearing estimates of $37,000 to $40,000. So at 50%, that's still the average homeowner who has a septic tank digging in their pocket for $20,000. It doesn't seem right. Then as far as the wells go, some of us prefer to be on a non-fluoridated water supply system as opposed to the heavily fluoridated water system that Southern Nevada provides. We get fresh, cold drinking water from deep inside the earth, and now you're going to force us to go and take heavily fluoridated water from Southern Nevada water source and basically force that upon people who might have chose their home because they had a septic tank and well water. So I think it's a heavy-handed position of Nevada to go and force this upon 15,000 homes. Is it going to really save us that much water in the long run, or are you guys just trying to get a cookie in your jar? I think this is a little heavy-handed.
Sir, we're over 2 minutes. If you could wrap up, please.
Okay, I can wholeheartedly understand that we are running out of water in southern Nevada. Maybe we should stop building new homes here. You go around the outskirts of town, everywhere there's a new housing development, but yet we're fighting for water, but we allow these new homes to be built, and then we put restrictions upon the people who already live here and have homes. It's not right and it's not fair. It should be rethought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next person in Las Vegas.
Hello, Committee Chair Cohen and other committee members. For the record, my name is Michelle Tombari. That's spelled Michelle-Tombari. I oppose AB 220. I am a homeowner in Clark County with a well-maintained septic system that I love. Clark County oversaw the installation and permitted our septic. Homeowners have paid for these systems that were approved by Clark County. To force us to switch to sewer comes at an unrealistic cost. Recently, a neighbor paid $37,000 to switch. And also, he now has yet another monthly bill to pay. This is too much of a burden for these targeted homeowners. If you want us to change what was already approved and we have already paid for, you need to pay 100% to have this change done. Some other points to consider. Untreated sewage frequently makes its way into rivers, streets, and other bodies of water. This is avoided with septic systems. Also, private septic systems don't use harsh chemicals that wastewater treatment plants do. Instead, the wastewater is filtered naturally. And finally, septic systems require far less infrastructure than city sewers. Plus, they don't use the energy that municipal treatment plants need. So, I hope you will oppose AB 220, or at the very least find the money to fund 100% of the changes that you want, because homeowners shouldn't be forced to pay for these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person in Las Vegas, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah Patton, Sarah-Patton. I live in Las Vegas. I have a property, it's about on a half acre, and we have 2 septic tanks. My concern is the cost. It's huge. I mean, if we're looking at 2 septic tanks because we have a casita in the back, it's huge. I'm all for conserving water. Like I said, I live on a property that's about a half acre. Everything is on a drip system. We also have a pool. And some of these allotments for water, my concern is, a single family home, you need to take into consideration how many adults and family members live in this home. Because of the economy, we have grown children that are currently living with us. That is more water use. But the biggest thing I would say right now, I mean, we're conserving water. We check our drippers, make sure everything is working properly. But the 2 septic tanks and the cost. We have AC units that we need to upgrade. We want to start saving for solar because everything is going up at an alarming rate. So this cost is not something that we can afford. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person in Las Vegas, please.
Hi, David Grant, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm opposed to this bill. As a septic owner, it does feel like we're being held hostage to a certain degree, being forced to convert, even with the help of the feds. If they could go 100%, that would definitely be nice, but I don't see that happening. And I'm going to allude to what Ed said earlier. It feels like a double standard with, you see these vacant lots turning into subdivisions and apartment buildings, and there's no end in sight. The growth still continues, and the ring of growth around the city, which was, they tried to implement, but that got shot down. It's too bad that didn't hold up, but I know this drought affects all of us, and as a septic owner, I just wish there was a different avenue, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none, and I don't think we have anyone in Elko. BPS, if we could go to the phones, please.
To provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 220, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Please also remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cyrus, C-Y-R-U-S. I oppose this bill for a number of reasons, ditto the comments made before. There's a lot of aspects that could use water conservation, so I believe this is really picking and choosing. The first obvious reason is that there's no effort, as far as I know, to go after casinos. It's always the little guy that gets all the push. Not to mention, we always talk about how there's like lack of water. I've seen reports that the lower end of the Colorado River towards Mexico is just overflowing. Maybe we should look into things like that. A lot of this lower water levels is because California is intaking a larger supply of the Colorado River. And not to mention, this is a state, because we always bring up climate change, that has done a lot of climate change policies. And by the way, if you really want to take climate action, you could extend the monorail to the airport. If water conservation is such a concern, why aren't we halting immigration? Because more population means more people. Didn't we have a 2002 conservation effort? Is there any updates on that? What's going on? And to refer to the previous comments about new development, I do believe we should have new development. It increases the supply of housing. We need it. Construction is still below all-time highs. However, it's the type of development that I'm very concerned. You have a lot of common area landscape areas, which I think are wasteful, that are maintained by HOAs, especially golf courses, swimming pools, and so forth, not to mention a lot of commercial areas. So I think a lot of new development can really be water efficient. They plant so many trees. It's kind of ironic. We're having another meeting that's going on talking about planting trees, but then we're talking about water conservation. Now, it depends on the trees we plant, but certainly we don't need to make these areas look like forests.
Sir, you're at 2 minutes.
So
If you could wrap
until
up, please.
Thank you. Have a water conservation plan that meets all sides. Great pleasure.
BPS, next person in opposition, please.
Good afternoon, committee members. First name is Joseph, last is DeMonte. My major concern with this bill, besides several other smaller concerns, is Section 38.2 under Section 29 that states the board of directors may limit, which essentially means possibly cut off, a single-family residence to 0.5 acre-feet of water per year. There is no mention in this bill of the number of people in the residence, the number of animals, seasonal family members that stay in Las Vegas, or pools and landscaping. This is an arbitrary number that is historically based on 3 people per unit. Single-family residence itself is not defined, as less than half of the homes in Las Vegas are actual single-family residences, and more than half of our Las Vegas population lives in apartments and other multifamily units. Furthermore, there are no restrictions in this bill on the enforcement action that the local boards can take, or the fines or rate increases that can be imposed, up to and including termination of water service if more than 0.5 acre-feet is used. Homeowners will be discriminated against in this bill, as there is no mention of apartments or hotels and their usages. Thank you very much for your time, and if this bill is to go forward, the specific section of the 0.5 acre-feet needs to be adjusted to not discriminate against households as mine that has upwards of 6 people in it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next person, BPS, please.
Caller, you are unmuted and may begin.
Hi there. My name is Pam Ojeda, Ojeda, and I live up here. The borders of 215 and the RNP. And like many of my neighbors up here, this is going to greatly affect us. Like people have mentioned before, we have already paid for our wells and our septic system. Those are built into our mortgages when we built our homes. None of those utilities and services were up here, so we didn't have a choice to pay for those. So not only are we going to have to pay the large burden of costs that we're already still paying for in our mortgage, so we're getting double charged for these services. And the problem is that none of your bill sponsors, they don't know how much it's going to cost. Tens of thousands of dollars is what they say. They still don't have any definitive answers for us. Not only that, what they're not taking into consideration is they're going to have to tear up our property, whether they have to cut through our driveways, tear up our yards to get to the septics and the wells. That's huge additional costs that are going to be burdened on us. And myself, we're retired, just like many of the people up here. People seem to think that because we live up here on these properties that we're wealthy. We've owned this land for over 30 years. So we're not wealthy. We don't have the money that can pay for these, especially when we've already paid them for the first place when we didn't have a choice. So now for somebody to want to come in and take that away from us, and we're going to pay the burden of the cost, is just not fair, and it's not acceptable. There should be some other way where those of us that have already paid for these services are allowed to continue on them and maybe grandfathered in and not allow any more. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, BPS, please.
Caller, please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Vicki Skilbred, Skilbred. Overall, I support conservation. I've replaced all my turf, low water using plants. I just recently spent $30,000 to put in solar. I have an EV car. I support overall good management, but I have questions. First of all, we've heard in the two hearings that there are 19,000 homes involved and then 15,000 homes involved. So not quite sure what that is. In 2 days that I found out about, 2 working days I found out about this bill, I've tried to determine where the nearest sewer line would be for both myself and my sister, who also lives in a county island on a half an acre with a septic tank, and have not been able to determine that. I have questions about last hearing's comments about how much water has been stored in the aquifer and even as far as Arizona. So it seems to me, as I understand water credits, that we are actually generating more water credits than we're allowed to put into the lake because of the existing contract. So I have some questions about that. I'm also confused about the timeline. This is the first time I've ever heard that we had to replace our septic tanks as soon as we came within 400 feet of a septic line. I've always been told that it was as soon as the septic tank went sour, you couldn't replace it and you would have to hook up. But that's why I take very, very good care of my septic tank. I still have questions about the financing method. Is it going to be an SID? Is it going to be a program? Is it going to be 50%, up to 100%? How will we know? Needless to say, I appreciate the comments made at the last hearing about notification, because mostly on AB 19, because I didn't know
ma'am,
about this until
we're over 2 minutes, if you could
Are we
wrap up,
done?
please.
Okay. Okay. Basically, that's about it. I have so many questions. Is there going to be another hearing, or how will I be able to get information to the answers to my questions? And then that's it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. You can send, it's a committee bill, so you can send questions to the committee. Okay, BPS, next caller, please.
Caller, you are unmuted and may begin. Caller, you are unmuted on our end. Are you muted on your phone? Chair, this is our final caller, and they seem to be having trouble unmuting.
Okay, BPS, I'm gonna ask for neutral testimony, and then we'll come back and see if we can get that caller. So do we have anyone in neutral? If so, please come forward. And then anyone in Las Vegas in neutral, please come forward. But let's start in Carson City. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Cohen and members of the Assembly Natural Resources Committee. My name is Leo Drozdoff, and I'm here before you on behalf of Truckee Meadows Water Authority, or TUMWA. We're testifying in neutral today because AB 20 in large part does not pertain to our jurisdiction. With that said, we do want the committee to know that we've had excellent communication and collaboration with SNWA during the interim regarding their legislative plans for AB 220. As always, they were forthcoming about their needs and rationale for changes. We appreciate their approach associated with AB 220, including the conceptual amendment. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Please go
Thank you,
ahead.
Chair, members of the committee. Bradley Mayer, partner with Argenta Partners, representing the Southern Nevada Health District. We've been working with the Water Authority for quite some time on this particular bill. I want to thank them for those efforts. As we kind of work to do our part on this important issue. We're kind of just working through the finer points and crossing the T's, dotting the I's of the amendment. We'll continue to do so before work session on this item. I would like to offer up Robert Fida, who's a subject matter expert from the Health District, who is also on the line in neutral, if anybody feels like there's any clarifying points you would like him to make in that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Chairwoman Cohen and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Carr, C-A-R-R. I'm the administrator of the Division of Environmental Protection, or NDEP. I appreciate the opportunity to provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 220, but I am here this afternoon to testify solely on sections 3 through 5. NDEP has significant concerns with the bill as written and continues to work with the proponents of the bill on amended language because it's not quite there yet. Unlike much of this bill, sections 3 through 5 apply to the entire state, and these policy changes put homeowners at risk. Sections 3 through 5 are part of 7 total sections existing in NRS that all work together and have been in place since 1991. Combined, the 7 sections protect homeowners from a developer who creates a new privately owned public water system, completes the development, and moves on, leaving behind a water utility that should be sustainable but sometimes is not. NRS prohibits NDEP from issuing a permit to a new privately owned water system until a local governing body assumes responsibility upfront in the event of default. These provisions of law ensure that the public entity is accountable for maintaining a safe and reliable supply for the impacted community, for providing public health protection through proper operation and maintenance of the system, and to make sure Nevada homeowners have a predictable and predefined solution if NDEP determines and declares that a water system owner has defaulted on their permit responsibilities. Additionally, these provisions allow swift actions which prevents potentially years-long enforcement and legal receivership proceedings in district courts that occur without these provisions in place. Such long, drawn-out solutions occurred prior to the law being put in place in 1991 and still occur today for the pre-1991 systems. These provisions are needed to safeguard, and they should not be struck as proposed by AB 220. Key discussions in the legislative history documentation for Senate Bill 172 in 1991, and also referencing Senate Concurrent Resolution 24 from the 1989 session, reinforce that we should not undo these provisions. In Douglas County, water systems known as Cave Rock, Skyland, Zephyr Cove, Sheridan Acres, and Job's Peak were taken over along the way for various reasons. In the last decade, additional systems have defaulted because they were pre-91 and the current law was not in effect. This is still real, but the existing NRSs help to combat these problems. These laws have created an engaged process for constructing sustainable systems while allowing homeowners assurances that the basic needs for safe drinking water will be provided.
We're over 2 minutes, so I'll ask you to provide your testimony, and we're going to go ahead and move your testimony to opposition. But if you can provide your testimony, we'll make it an exhibit.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
There is actually a 4-minute testimony that I did provide, so it does have a little bit more information for the committee.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, Director.
Thank you. Adam Sullivan, for the record, Nevada State Engineer. I'm here to testify neutral on this bill, and specifically with regard to the elements of the bill that direct actions by the Office of the State Engineer. We do recognize the benefits of this bill for water conservation and the importance of water conservation in Southern Nevada. The bill as proposed is something that we could carry out as an agency, and I'm specifically referring to Section 26, if this does become law. With regard to the proposed amendment, similarly, we would be able to carry it out. There's a few elements of clarity that we would want to work with SNWA regarding the dates for effective implementation and the requirement for the state engineer to adopt regulations, as well as correcting the or adding some clarity to defining designated basins and citing to the appropriate statutory provisions for that. The significant component for the Division of Water Resources would be the requirement to adopt regulations with regard to the requirement to hook up for revocable permits to hook up to the municipal supply. This could be a significant effort on our part because it does affect a lot of people. But again, it is doable, but it's within the ordinary course of business for our office. And my last point is that I'd like to sort of support what SNWA was describing when talking about temporary permits, and the reason for this is there's so many different definitions of temporary when in water law, and this is specifically referring to revocable rights that were issued in, as Mr. Belanger described, and that only applies to the Las Vegas Basin. And there's no implications for other temporary rights elsewhere in the state. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else in the room in neutral? Seeing none, let's go to the phones for neutral.
To provide testimony in neutral on Assembly Bill 220, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Please also remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Aiden Downey, AODHAN-DOWNEY, with Carrera, Nevada, representing the Nevada Realtors, and here to testify neutral to AB 220. The Realtors would like to thank the Southern Nevada Water Authority for working with us on amendments to the bill. Water conservation is important to our members, clients, and the future of Nevada. We appreciate the continued conversations to further address our concerns of the program to fund not less than 50% of the conversion. The Realtors would like to see this threshold increase to 85% to ensure homeowners are able to financially participate and connect to the sewer system. Anything below that could be a financial burden to those that can least afford it, especially seniors, people with disabilities, and first-time homebuyers. Thank Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today.
BPS, next person in neutral, please.
Hello, for the record, my name is Robert Fida. Bradley, I believe mentioned I'm the subject matter expert, and I'm here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I don't think we have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Fida.
Thank you.
Next person in neutral, please, BPS.
Chair, that was our last caller to testify in neutral. Would you like me to try the caller in opposition again?
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Christian Salmon, and I oppose AB 220. This is not about well water that is used, is deposited into septic systems. And therefore refreshes the water table for later use. So effectively, this is the same as municipality water that is used in and put into the sewer system, which is deposited into Lake Mead. Lake Mead's level isn't the issue. That's constantly shown on the TV. It's not about optics. This is about a real discussion. Even though the Southern Nevada Water Authority says that we're not paying our fair share, we are. We do pay our fair share when we have a water well. We have electric bills, repairs, and such. When we use more, we pay more. That's an incentive for us not to pay more and to conserve, and we all do. 3 years ago, I paid $24,000 in a repair. Last year in upgrades, I paid $20,000. So these are real bills, and neighbors we feel we're being routed. Water processing through the municipality water system simply is not healthy. With tests of recycled water, we are seeing disease, prescription drugs, and other items that should not be in our water supply present in the water. This burden just isn't fair to the taxpayer as well. Why should we all pay for this? This simply is not needed. I'd like to make the point that most of the people presenting, such as Danny Thomas, municipality water services, sewer service agencies, and other paid lobbyists stand to make huge revenues from the conversion of independent water wells and sewer service.
Sir, please
Hello?
testify to the bill and not. It's not acceptable to attack the ethics and character of people who have otherwise testified in this matter.
Well, I'm just stating the obvious, though. That's all I'm stating. And this bill does not address new development. Why is that? If it's really about conserving, then why are we not addressing that as well? The last thing I'd like to mention is that I've heard geologists state that we do not have a water problem, and we have credits that are constantly being credited back for years and decades. And we are well ahead of the game. Even the head of the Southern Nevada Water Authority has said as much, that even with sustained development, continuing forward, that we have plenty of water, and this is not even an issue. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, everybody.
Okay, thank you. So BPS, do we have anyone else on the phone?
Chair, there are no more callers to testify.
Okay, with that, I will invite the presenters back up for any closing statements. Okay, I'm getting waved off. So with that, we will close the hearing on AB 220 and open the hearing on AB 221, which authorizes the management of designated terrestrial invertebrates. And I will remind the committee that we are working on a conceptual amendment, and we'll also give the crowd a moment to clear the room.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, Howard Watts for the record. It's good to be back. And it's my pleasure to also present Assembly Bill 221 for your consideration today. This was another bill that was recommended out of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Based on conversations that happened in the interim, it was realized that insect populations actually fall into a loophole where they are not defined as wildlife within our state. As you'll hear, that doesn't make them any less critical to our biodiversity, our habitat, and our general web of wildlife. And there have also been times when we've needed to protect and manage those species. AB 221 seeks to correct this oversight and give our Department of Wildlife, which already manages all the other wildlife species within our state, the ability to manage insects as well. And really what this is about is its authority, so it does not require any specific actions. We're tying it to our state wildlife action plan, which has been conducted by the department to identify species in need of some potential conservation action. And again, all it does is allow our wildlife managers, if they see fit, to be able to take actions to protect those species. Ultimately, just to be really clear, what we want to do is prevent species from being listed as endangered, because that comes with a whole host of other cascading consequences. And once that happens, our state agencies are going to have to do a whole host of things, as well as private entities, in order to protect those species. So what AB 221 is seeking to do is get out ahead of the game when there is a potential issue identified, to go and do work to stabilize and protect those populations so that we avoid the consequences that come with potential Endangered Species Act listing. So with that, I will turn it over to my co-presenters. We have a very brief presentation, and then we'd be glad to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Assemblyman Watts, Chair Cohen, and members of the Assembly. My name is Matt Forrester, F-O-R-I-S-T-E-R. I'm a professor at the University of Nevada, Reno, a professor of biology, and I'm speaking on my own behalf, not as a representative of the university. So the insect of Nevada are a rich and varied part of the natural resources of our state. They are, in fact, the most diverse kind of wildlife. Just in Nevada, there are over 1,000 species of bees, over 200 species of butterflies, and thousands of other important different kinds of insects. These animals are found everywhere, from farms and ranches to cities and mountains and towns. Butterflies and bees and other insects are the glue that hold together healthy environments. They pollinate crops and wild plants. They are food for birds and fish. They improve soil and clean up plant and animal waste through natural decomposition. One study found that insects are worth $70 billion each year to the U.S. economy because of all those free natural services that they provide. However, a 2021 scientific paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that insect populations globally are decreasing around 1% to 2% per year. So that might sound like a small number, but that's a compounding loss. So a 2% decline over 20 years amounts to about a 30% loss in total abundance of insects. This means fewer insects to pollinate crops and wild plants, fewer insects for birds and fish to eat, and a reduction in all of the other services that benefit humans and the planet. You might be familiar with monarch butterflies, shown in the upper left there. In fact, if you grew up in Reno, you might have had an elementary school teacher who went out and brought in local monarch caterpillars to rear in the classroom, and that is not happening anymore. And that's because the western population of monarchs has declined by over 90% in recent decades. You see that in the graph on the left. Many other pollinators in Nevada, including the western bumblebee, are in a similar position. My lab at UNR published a study recently in the journal Science documenting a decline in the abundance of butterflies in the western U.S. of around 25% over recent decades. which you can see in the graph there on the right, specific to Nevada. This is about a 1.6% annual decline, which is unfortunately consistent with findings from other parts of the world. This is not good news for healthy ecosystems in our region, but the good news is that we're here today talking about this important bill. And there is support among Nevadans for positive change. To say more about that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Kevin Burrows.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Assemblyman Watts. Thank you, Chair Cohen, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kevin Burrows, last name spelled B-U-R-L-S. I'm an endangered species conservation biologist for the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. Nevadans strongly support conserving pollinators in the face of insect declines across the West, with over 3/4 of respondents from the state recognizing pollinator loss as a serious problem in a 2020 poll. This means Nevadans recognize that insect decline is an issue that affects us all, and that we need to use every tool available to us to protect our state's most vulnerable bees, butterflies, and other insects. Unfortunately, current Nevada Revised Code does not define invertebrates as wildlife as it does mammals, birds, reptiles, and other vertebrate species. This means that the Nevada Department of Wildlife does not have regulatory or management authority to help conserve insects we know are in steep decline, such as the monarch seen here on the right. The agency is unable to act to help these species recover, leaving them at risk of needing federal protection under the Endangered Species Act to prevent their extinction. Assembly Bill 221, as amended, would define, quote, non-pest invertebrate wildlife species of greatest conservation need, end quote, as wildlife under Nevada Revised Code, allowing the Nevada Department of Wildlife to work to conserve and restore declining insect species such as the monarch butterfly or other vulnerable insects, including the pallid small wood nymph butterfly on the top right, or the western bumblebee on the bottom right. This bill specifically gives the department the ability to manage species that appear on its list of species of greatest conservation need within the State Wildlife Action Program. There are currently 66 species of bees and butterflies on this list, which can be revised by the Department of Wildlife. Conservation actions by the Nevada Department of Wildlife can effectively recover vulnerable wildlife populations, reducing the need to list these species under the Endangered Species Act. Because the Nevada Department of Wildlife controls wildlife permits and fees for wildlife management, this bill does require a 2/3 vote in the Assembly and Senate. However, this bill does not impose permitting on invertebrates and does not impose fees on agriculture or other activities. It also does not designate any endangered species or institute any new provisions or protections for invertebrates. This bill simply allows the Nevada Department of Wildlife to act to conserve insects that appear on their list of species of greatest conservation need, including the Morrison bumblebee on the top and the large marble butterfly on the bottom right. These insects share many things in common with the monarch butterfly. They both have large western ranges that include Nevada, and both are in steep decline and may be in danger of extinction if these declines continue. That's why we ask you today to recognize the importance of Nevada's insects and vote in favor of AB 221 as amended, allowing the Nevada Department of Wildlife to conserve and restore non-pest invertebrate wildlife species of greatest conservation need across the state. And I will just mention that on Nellis, you can also find a letter of support from over 140 scientists, including many in Nevada, highlighting the broad support for this issue. Thank you very much, and we'll take any questions.
And if it's all right with you, Madam Chair, I'll very quickly walk through the bill. It's pretty short. I'll actually direct members' attention first to the conceptual amendment that's proposed because it relates to the entirety of the bill. We're removing the word terrestrial when describing invertebrates throughout the bill. That provides NDOW with the full flexibility to manage any invertebrate that's threatened or identified as a species of greatest conservation need. There are no aquatic invertebrates currently included in this categorization in the State Wildlife Action Plan, but they could be in the future, so we want to make sure that we've got it broad enough to cover that if that's something that comes up moving forward. Going to the text of the bill, Section 2 will define now a designated invertebrate And again, that's a non-pest species, so there are pest insects. Those are managed by the Department of Wildlife because of the impact, or the Department of Agriculture, pardon me, for the impacts that they have as pests. So any pest species not included under this definition. It has to be an invertebrate, and again, be designated as a species of greatest conservation need in the State Wildlife Action Plan. Again, the goal there is that this isn't managing every single insect that's out there in the state. It's identifying those probably linked to other habitat issues that are probably affecting some other species or that have seen really significant declines that we want to get out in front and make sure that we're doing something to try and stabilize those populations. Section 3 defines what the State Wildlife Action Plan is. It's actually approved by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it lays out essentially the state's wildlife conservation plan. And again, this is something that in its most recent update, invertebrates, insects have been added to it for the first time. And so we're trying to make sure that the rest of our policies are aligned with that. And then the rest of the bill really just makes conforming changes throughout statute to make sure that this new inclusive definition of wildlife is included. Additionally, just to provide a little bit of background on the 2/3 that's on this bill. So NRS 503.585 provides that any animal declared to be threatened would be placed on the list of fully protected species, and that in order to then capture, remove, or impact those species, a permit would have to be issued, and that the department must charge a fee that is not to exceed the highest fee established for any other special permit set by the commission. So because of that triggering where if there was ever a permit, there must be a fee charged, that's what generates the 2/3. Again, that is not envisioned right now, but because that is a potential outcome, that's one of the reasons why the 2/3 is on there. And additionally, NRS 502.240 provides authority for NDOW to generally charge fees for licenses relating to wildlife. I would say it's extremely unlikely that there is ever going to be an insect-related license. But again, since we're changing the definition of what could fall into that category, it potentially opens up the potential things that these quote-unquote revenue generators fall into, which is why there is the 2/3 on the bill. I just wanted to make it clear at the outset, and also make it clear that, again, there is not intent or plan to do these things, but this is how the legal interpretation goes if there's any potential increased revenue generation of a policy. With that, we thank you very much for your time and are glad to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I have a question from Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the testimony. My takeaway from it is insects are already in the state plan. The state plan already exists. I don't see the reason for this. Can you elucidate?
Thank you, Howard Watts, for the record. And I think the Department of Wildlife will be here to testify in neutral, and perhaps they'd be able to provide some additional background on this. Again, our understanding is that under current state statute, their ability to actually manage these species is quite limited. So to the extent that a species perhaps gets designated, then they may be involved. Again, we're trying to get out in front of that and make sure how can we manage these populations to avoid the point where they've been designated as threatened with extinction. And so that's one of the really key things that we're trying to do. Again, at the end of the day, it still doesn't put a requirement, so the department has a wide amount of autonomy and latitude to decide what, if anything, they want to do to conserve those species. We just want to make sure that they have those tools in their toolbox, so to speak. And our understanding is that current state statute does not make that clear that they or any other agency has the ability to take these proactive actions. So even though they're in the State Wildlife Action Plan, that's essentially a recognition that they are in need of conservation action. But when it comes to actually taking the actions, we believe they don't currently have statutory authority to do so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Vice Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for being forward-thinking and basically bringing forward the circle of life, it feels like, with this. My question has to do with Section 3, in particular, again, the State Wildlife Action Plan. I'm not sure if you're going to have that information or if that is something that I'll need to ask later. How often is that updated? And is there, with this new language, if it were to go through, would there be a need for updates to the item that would be filed with the federal government?
Thank you for that question. Howard Watts for the record. I will defer to the department to provide some updates around their process and timeline. What I will say is that the intent of this bill, because I believe the Wildlife Action Plan has just been updated, is not to require any further changes. And again, there have already been insect species identified within the latest version of the plan for the first time. So it's not to impact any of that. And again, the Wildlife Action Plan is kind of a high level of what do we have, what's in need of some support in our state, and then more detailed management actions programs. Those are all determined by the department on an ongoing basis and at a more detailed level than the action plan, which is high level. So that's we don't envision this requiring any changes to the Wildlife Action Plan. In fact, as I indicated before, the latest version of it, I think, helps point to the importance of aligning the statutory authority.
Okay, Assemblymember Hanson.
Sorry, I didn't have a question, and then one just popped in my mind, so thank you for that, Chair. So if this bill were to pass, how, and I could to defer to NDOW, how is it staffed? Like we know we have big game biologists, we have, fur bear, we have all these different subcategories at NDOW that manage different populations of wildlife. So now will we have an invertebrate, or we don't say invertebrate, or we don't say terrestrial? I'm learning. Do we have an invertebrate biologist who's going to manage? And I know we mentioned the 2/3 out of fees. Is that how they're going to pay for somebody? So we'll start with that.
Thank you for that question. Howard Watts for the record. So I think it would be appropriate for the Department of Wildlife to add an entomologist to their staff to be able to really kind of dig in on some of these issues and explore potential management actions for these species. As far as how that would be funded, I don't think it's through licensing the hunting of butterflies. And again, that the other piece around the designation of species and permits for them being taken, I mean, that is an extremely narrow, very rarely, if ever, triggered piece of statute. And so, it would come down to NDOW's existing revenue streams, basically, which is overwhelmingly sportsman funded, and that funding supports conservation of all the different wildlife species, both game and non-game, across our state, as well as a bit of general fund, and critically, very substantial federal matching dollars.
I stepped out for a moment, so forgive me if you went over this, but the State Wildlife Action Plan, I see that it has to be approved by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. But so if the State Wildlife Plan, when our state comes into or makes pacts with, with other states, like for instance, having to do with wildlife at Lake Tahoe, that type of thing, that the state wildlife action plan would always fall under that in ranking, I guess is subject to what we've done with the federal government, what we've done with other states, that type of thing.
Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. Howard Watts for the record. So yes, in general, a lot of the federal policy supersedes, and again, that's one of the core things that we're trying to do is avoid triggering the federal policy known as the Endangered Species Act by getting out in front on the conservation of these species. As for the Wildlife Action Plan, again, this is kind of a framework that's been adopted across states and involves the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but at the end of the day, it is within a certain framework. That is the state's plan and the state's evaluation of the different wildlife that may be in need of conservation action.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no other questions, we will, do you want us to move on to support or move on to NDOW and have them come up and answer questions? And just have NDOW come up in neutral? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on in support. Anyone in support? And then if there's anyone in Elko or Las Vegas, I don't think there's anyone there anymore, but fill in those chairs. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the bill sponsor for bringing forward this bill. Patrick Donnelly, Great Basin Director with the Center for Biological Diversity. We support this bill for lots of reasons that I won't tire you with because they've already been given in the presentation. Just want to highlight a couple elements about the bill, and especially what it does not do. So this bill is not an endangered species listing for these species of greatest conservation need. It is simply giving NDOW the tools to manage those species, and as was pointed out, ideally to prevent the need for federal endangered species listings. You know, in many cases, my organization does pursue endangered species listings for species, but that's the last resort. The first resort should be state management of those species, because in many cases, the tools are there, we just need to give NDOW the ability to use those tools. Another thing this bill does not do is provide an avenue for litigation. There's no new powers of litigation brought forward by this bill. There's no ways that this would bring forward more litigation. It's simply giving NDOW management authority, so it doesn't alter any of that in statute. And so in conclusion, we would urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Christy Cabrera-Georgeson here with the Nevada Conservation League in support of AB 221. Insects are really critical to the health of our ecosystems. We think we should give NDOW the tools to manage these species, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Cohen and members of the committee. I'm Jane Amon, External Affairs Director for the Nature Conservancy in Nevada, and we are testifying in support of AB 221. We also believe that invertebrates are a critical part of ecosystems and they're integral to food webs. TNC supports the amendment to remove the word terrestrial from the bill language so that all invertebrates are covered. Invertebrate diversity is threatened by climate change and loss of habitat, and a comprehensive wildlife management plan should include invertebrates. We support NDOW having the authority to manage invertebrates as part of the State Wildlife Action Plan. Thank you for considering our support.
Thank you. Anyone else in Carson City in support? Seeing none in Elko or Las Vegas, let's go to the phones, please.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 221, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Please also remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Hi, yes, Chair Cohn and members of the committee. My name is Barry Levinson, a volunteer member of Sierra Club's Legislative Committee. On behalf of the club and our more than 30,000 members and supporters statewide, we enthusiastically support AB 221. We are pleased to see that Nevada Legislature has the opportunity to recognize the importance of invertebrates to us and to all the creatures with whom we share our state. AB 221 will expand the wildlife managed by NDOW to include all invertebrates. This will allow them to work to conserve butterflies, bees, and other important insect species, as you have heard. We tend to ignore invertebrates, but they are essential to the web of life. Terrestrial invertebrates play an essential role in soil health, plant pollination, and as a food supply for countless bird, reptile, and mammal species. Some insects provide benefit by feeding on pest insects, such as ladybugs eating aphids. And the monarch butterfly has become a symbol of our changing climate and human impact on ecosystems and would be heartbreaking to lose. AB 221 will allow NDOW to manage important insect species in order to preserve them and the web of life that they support. For these reasons, we urge you to support AB 221. Thank you.
Next caller, please, BPS.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Cassandra Lisenby, Kassandra, last name Lisenbee for the record. I am a employee of Great Basin Resource Watch, and we are here to support AB 221. We all realize the essential role that pollinators play for healthy ecosystems as well as economies through agricultural service benefits, and we urge you to support this bill to give NDOW the protections and the ability to protect this critical species and invertebrates. Thank you so much.
Next person in support, please.
Yes, my name's Dave McNinch, DAVIDMCNINCH, and I am here to represent the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners. We did vote to support AB 221 with the conceptual amendment. The board is aware of the fiscal note. We continued with our support. And I'm hopeful that when you hear the testimony from the department here shortly regarding the State Wildlife Action Plan and how invertebrate management conservation fits into that, that it will alleviate many of your concerns. I appreciate you allowing me to testify. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person on the phones in support, please.
Chair, there are no more callers to testify.
Okay, with that, we will go to opposition in Carson City. Seeing none, I don't think there's anyone in Las Vegas, but anyone in Las Vegas in opposition, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, anyone in Elko? Seeing none, anyone in the phones in opposition?
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 221, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify.
Thank you. With that, we will go to neutral in Carson City. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Alan Cheney, I am Director of Nevada Department of Wildlife. We were not prepared to provide testimony. We were here to answer questions, and we missed that opportunity. So I apologize for that confusion, but we could stand for any questions whenever it suits your need.
We do have a question. Please go ahead, Vice Chair.
So thank you so much for being here and for following along with it. My question has to do with if this were to pass, would we then need to redo the State Wildlife Action Plan and refile it? Or would we just be able to be like, yep, that's part of it? How would we handle that when it comes to the State Wildlife Action Plan?
Yes, thank you for the question, Madam Chair, through you. I am actually going to introduce Jen Newmark, our Wildlife Diversity Administrator, and she has great expertise on the Wildlife Action Plan.
And please go directly to the member.
Good evening. I'm Jen Newmark, Wildlife Diversity Division Administrator for Nevada Department of Wildlife. So the State Wildlife Action Plan was just revised in September of 2022. It is currently waiting approval from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There's 8 required elements that go into that plan, and they're just reviewing the plan to ensure that the state met all of those requirements. As already mentioned before, we did add 66 species of invertebrates to our species of greatest conservation need. So there will be no revision required after this bill, if it should pass.
Thank you. So that's great news. And then the other thing, I believe, is there any sort of financial help that could possibly happen if we do actually pass this? And maybe I'm getting it mixed up with something else of like possible matching funds if we were to try to do things to help out this area. Does that make sense? Or maybe I misheard that too.
Again, for the record, this is Jen Newmark with NDOW. The department did submit a fiscal note to request support for a staff specialist to help coordinate and manage invertebrates. We currently don't have the expertise or the capacity right now to do that. And it would be a considered match for federal funding. The State Wildlife Action Plan makes the state eligible for what's called state wildlife grants from the federal agency. And so we'll be able to use that funding to match. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I realize this is not the Money Committee, but I greatly appreciate that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. With passage of this bill, assuming it passes, the number of species that NDOW manages goes from hundreds to thousands. Is one person enough? How are you realistically going to try and manage all those species?
For the record, Jen Newmark with Department of Wildlife. So the way the bill is currently structured, it will provide management authority for those species that were listed as species of greatest conservation need. So 66 species will come to NDOW for management authority. If the world were according, like to me, and we had all the resources, clearly we could use more than one biologist, but this at least gets us moving in the right direction for those 66 species.
And following up on that question, I don't mean to sound glib, but I mean, we've heard over the years how management is done, for instance, with big game, right? With bubblers and, following them and tagging their ears to literally follow them. Like, you're not going to follow butterflies that way. I mean, they're it's I'm guessing it's not equivalent, that or is it equivalent? Is it going to take the same amount of effort to follow, if you're following bighorn sheep, is that going to be equivalent to following butterfly, or managing, I should say?
For the record, Jen Newmark with Department of Wildlife. It's an excellent observation, and I would offer this, that the incredible variability in wildlife, from big game to small mammals to invertebrates to aquatics. There's a whole lot of tools in our toolbox, and we do a lot of different techniques. We actually do tag monarchs and follow them as they migrate. So there is that opportunity. There's emerging technologies in the future that we anticipate helping us. But really, honestly, a lot of lift comes also from our habitat restoration work that we do. If we provide healthy and fully functioning ecosystems, that lifts all boats. So there's a whole suite of tools that the department regularly uses across the board, with all of our divisions working together.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you both. Okay, so I don't think we have anyone in neutral in Las Vegas or Elko, but we can go to neutral on the phones, please.
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 221, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify.
Thank you. And with that, I'm getting the wave off from Assemblymember Watts. So with that, I will conclude the hearing on Assembly Bill 221. And we will move on to public comment. Do we have anyone in Carson City for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Anyone in Las Vegas or Elko for public comment? Seeing none, if we can go to the phones for public comment.
To provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Please also state and spell your name for the record.
And we'll just remind folks that public comment is as not an opportunity to rehear bills, but to comment on any of the other issues that are in front of this committee and is limited to 2 minutes per person.
Good evening. I'd like to talk about urban heat island effect, if that is okay. The way you can really solve this issue is you can, first of all, get rid of the policies that encourage this kind of process. And I'm talking about mainly parking minimums. We should not have a set number of parking spaces to tell a developer how many that they have to put in. We have a lot of empty, underutilized streets that are being built. We have codes that mandate arterials or collector routes. These are typically the middle routes in between calm streets and freeways. If you have roundabouts, the number of lanes can be reduced from 3 to 2. So these are many important ways. And why this is important? Well, because Las Vegas is the fastest warming city in America, probably about 15 degrees warmer than where we were in the 1940s. And by the way, this is a different issue than climate change. I also wanted to talk about the recent bank failure, if it's okay, because I'm very concerned about this. Remember, this area was among the hardest hit about 10 to 15 years ago. I feel like this is going to create a domino effect, that the problems of that particular mess was not fixed. Home prices got reinflated, pumped by bailouts, low interest rates, deficit spending, foreclosures being bought out, forbearance of homes are being released, people were not held accountable, banks were not broken up, and not to mention this mass ongoing of poor quality, defective homes continue to build, worsening our urban planning problems. I feel like next time it's going to be perhaps worse, not to mention something is telling me it might even be game over. So rethink about this. Thank you so much. Yield my time.
Thank you. Next person for public comment, please.
Chair, there are no more callers wishing to provide public comment.
Okay, anything from anyone on the committee? Okay, seeing none, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.